Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another video on World War II, the Allies turning the tide. So in this series of videos, we're looking at the different places in which World War II really turned around from an Axis victory to an Axis defeat. So far we've looked at the Pacific Theater and where the war turned around there. Last time we looked at Stalingrad and El Alamein in North Africa and Italy, and we looked at how the war turned around there. Now, once Italy gets knocked out of the war and then, of course, eventually joins on the Allied side, Stalin again goes to his allies in Britain and the United States and tells them, we need to open up a third front against the Germans. The Eastern Front is always moving west. The Italian front is moving further and further north, so the Germans are divided in two directions all at the same time, but Stalin wants more. Stalin wants a third front in the West to accelerate the process of winning the war. And so when they're in this particular situation on the map that we're looking at, they start looking around to where we can open up another front. And some people thought Greece would be a great idea. Southern France might be a great idea. Other people started looking at some other options. And the options that they start looking at are the invasion of France. Now, the issue becomes that since 1942, the Nazis have been working on building what was called the Atlantic Sea Wall. The Atlantic Sea Wall was a defensive fortification that started in northern Norway and ran all the way along the coast, all the way down to the border with Spain. Now, of course, Spain is under Franco at this time. It's a fascist country. It's not involved in World War II at all, so they didn't need to defend that. But everything else that the Nazis control, from Norway to southern France, has this Atlantic seawall on it. And it's a series of defenses. So there are pillboxes. Pillboxes are that reinforced concrete bunker on top of the cliff that you can see in the lower right-hand side. We can also see that, of course, along a lot of this coast, there are natural cliffs, which makes it very difficult. They string up barbed wire, they put landmines, they put anti-tank obstacles. This was really supposed to create a situation which Hitler referred to as Fortress Europe, making it so that no army would ever be able to land on the beaches of Europe and to retake it from the Nazis, to allow Hitler to run a 1,000-year Reich. Well, the decision was made that ultimately France was the next target for the Allies, and they were going to land on those beaches in a place called Normandy. Normandy is a long stretch of relatively flat beach that also does have cliffs overlooking it, but since it was relatively far away from the closest tank base, the decision was to land soldiers and Marines on the beaches. The night before, they were going to do an airdrop and drop paratroopers behind the enemy lines to cut communications towers and to blow up some bridges, to allow the soldiers to make it onto the beaches, to fight their way up to the top of the beaches, and to seize the beaches of Normandy so that ultimately the invasion of Europe could begin. On June the 6th of 1944, which is sometimes referred to as D-Day, also, this is called Operation Overlord in military terms. The largest military operation in all of human history was undertaken. It was undertaken by 3 different countries. The United States was in charge of Utah and Omaha beaches. The British were in charge of Gold and Sword beaches. And the Canadians were in charge of Juno Beach. And those 5 beaches are ultimately going to be attacked from the water, from the navies that are ferrying people across the English Channel from the United Kingdom, putting them on landing craft and driving them up to the beaches, so that literally just through force of will, we are going to overcome the Atlantic seawall. June the 6th of 1944, the men load up onto the landing craft and off they go to hit those beaches at Normandy Beach. It's a tremendous amount of suffering. It's a tremendous amount of loss. I would very much encourage you to watch the opening scene from Saving Private Ryan, which is an excellent depiction of the landings at some of the hardest hit beaches on Normandy. It's really an incredible exercise in amazing, amazing sacrifice. And this was, part of the sacrifice that people in this generation that we call the greatest generation, this is part of the reason that we refer to them as that, right? They were willing to make this sacrifice to charge at impossible odds, to capture the beaches of Normandy, and to be victorious and to be successful. And through their sacrifice, of course, Normandy was captured. They started putting in place temporary harbors and landing heavy equipment. Eventually, they conquered the city of Cherbourg, where they got a deep port so that they could start landing even more heavy equipment. And then began the race across northwestern France to start fighting their way through Europe to conquer Nazi Germany. This is going to happen throughout 1944. During 1944, they get pretty much right up to the German border, and then the lines stall out. And when the lines stall out, it's going to ultimately take us until the springtime of 1945 to actually make our way into Germany and to start taking apart the Nazi government. Now, of course, the war would continue all the way into the spring of 1945, with the Soviets moving the Soviets moving west, the Allies in the west moving east, and we're squeezing Germany itself from east and west, and also from the south, because of course the Italians are now fighting in the Alps mountains, all the way up to the point where actually on the left-hand side here we see the American army meeting up with the Soviet Red Army in April of 1945 at the Elbe River. Now, the Soviets were the ones that actually got to Berlin first, and what they started to do was to shell the city of Berlin with artillery strikes all day and all night, trying to pound that city into submission so that ultimately Hitler would surrender and the war would be over. However, what they didn't understand was that Hitler was hiding out underground in a reinforced concrete bunker. He was safe, even though he was surrounded, and in his last desperate attempt to hold on to power, Hitler unleashed his one remaining weapon, which was called the Volkssturm. The Volkssturm was basically the storm of the people. This was when he unleashed everybody, old people, children, sick people, wounded people. He called on everyone to do their duty for the good of the Reich and to stop the invaders from conquering Germany. Now, of course, this didn't work, but ultimately it was his last attempt to make this enormous sacrifice for National Socialism. That's it for the video today. In the next video, we're going to look at how the war itself actually comes to an end. The last 3 videos have been about how the war turns around and how the tide was turned. In the next video, we're going to look at how World War II comes to an end, and then we'll start looking at some of the consequences of the Second World War. So I hope that this video finds you feeling good. I hope everybody is healthy. I hope everybody is safe. Please leave a like and subscribe so that you get the notifications from when new videos post. If you have any questions, post them in the comments below or post them on Google Classroom. Please let me know if there's anything that you need from me, and I will see you in the next video.